Where do we go from here? 20 seconds to defend Joe Biden, the indefensible.
We go right back to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue because we do have good academic news. But the media doesn't want to cover it. He is correct about that. He shouldn't just say, you're looking at the wrong thing. They need to communicate this better. But we got revised third quarter GDP growth up to 4.9%. Unheard of. Consumer confidence went up 14%, largest jump in a decade. Inflation is running at an annualized rate below Powell's target, which is why he's talking about a rate cut. Personal income's up. Grocery and energy prices down last month. In the Quinnipiac poll, this part of it is really important. They did a forward-looking question. What do you think 2024 is going to be like? 48% say the economy is going to be better, and 62% think that they are going to be better off in the next year. When is the election? November 2024. Democrats, make your case. There is a case to be made.
Yep, that's Jessica Tarlov on Fox News, bringing the heat on what's really going on in the economy right now. And the fact is, it's getting better. And as much as Fox News wants to deny that, they're spinning their wheels desperately trying to do so. Americans are experiencing themselves. Hi, I'm Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy with FP Wellman, right here in the MeidasTouch Network. It's the end of the year. It's usually a time of year where I'm going to try and end the year on a positive note, and I wanted to do that. Unfortunately for me, I also got sick. You may notice my voice is a little off, and I look like hell. But I wanted to say hi and send you guys off at the end of this wonderful year, my first calendar year on the MeidasTouch Network. Incredible growth for our show and all of you for joining us. But here's the good news. The good news is that we are winning. I know you hear that a lot from me, right? You hear me tell you all the time that we are winning. And look, the last 2 weeks have been remarkable for the pro-democracy movement and especially for the Biden administration. Something happened halfway through December where people realized things are getting better. Consumer confidence jumped double digits, which it hasn't happened in decades, as people went out. And my own small focus groups told me the same thing. As I've mentioned previously, my daughter and her mom own a store in Fredericksburg, Virginia, Sugar and Spruce. They saw record numbers coming in this year at the end of the year for the holidays. Their days right up to Christmas beat their Black Friday as people realized they could spend their money. The Fed announced they're going to actually lower rates in the next year. As we go into the election year, you're going to see the interest rates will go down again as we hope. We see consumer confidence. I love donuts. It's a thing. And my local donut store told me the other day on Christmas Eve, it was their best week in the history of the store. So again, people are kind of starting to vote with their wallets. They're starting to feel confident. They're starting to believe that we're going in the right direction. And the polls will take a while to show that. I get it. But what you can see it yourself. You saw it when you went shopping. You saw it when you go to the gas pump yourself and see the gas has gone down. It's hard. Look, they can tell you it's $8 all they want at their rallies. But when it's less than $4 in Hawaii, you know that prices are coming down. So I just want to tell you guys, thank you. Have faith. We've got this. I wanted to go and I still want to share a show with you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share an interview with you that I did earlier in the year before I joined the MeidasTouch Network, actually, from February of this year with the incredible Katie Phang of MSNBC. And Katie and I had a great discussion about how she got to where she is today, her views on things. We shot this interview right before the first Trump indictment came down. But you'll see that Katie was pretty dead on in her predictions about how this would go. And I think you'll find this a fascinating interview. For those who haven't seen it before, you probably haven't. It's on the On Democracy YouTube channel, but has never been broadcast on the MeidasTouch Network. I apologize. I can't give you a whole show this week. As you can see, I'm fading fast with this illness. I hope to recover quickly and be back with you next week. But in the meantime, I hope you had a wonderful holidays. I hope you have a happy new year. And let's keep this fight going and keep it together. And we're going to do great. I have faith. I have faith in us as a nation. With that, let's talk to Katie Phang.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. As I previously mentioned, literally 30 seconds ago, I am Fred Wellman, the host of this show. So glad to have you here. This week's guest is one of my favorite follows on social media and on TV. So I was really thrilled to text her and say, hey, you want to come on my show? And she did. I suckered another great person to come on the show. Continuing my history of getting cool people to come on my show, not knowing just how crazy it is. And nonetheless, if you're honestly, I tell you what, guys, if you're not paying attention to things right now, our guest this week is on a roll lately, and you need to tune in. Katie Phang started off as a lawyer before beginning her path as a legal analyst locally in Miami and continued to grab national attention. Now she has her own show on MSNBC and Peacock, aptly titled The Katie Phang Show. I tell you, branding, as well as hosting her own podcast, Class Action. Her talent makes her a frequent guest host across MSNBC, and now she's joining us. Katie, welcome to the show. I appreciate you taking time for me.
It is an honor to be asked to be a part of this amazing experience. What a journey you've had. So thanks for having me.
It's been a ride. I'll tell you, it's been an interesting journey to get here. And I always start the show off that way. It's like, you have had quite a career, 20 years or so of between being a lawyer and now you're on TV. I mean, you've become a real great voice. I love your voice of telling it like it is in this incredible moment we're facing. What was the journey for you to get from state's attorney's office in Miami to where you are at MSNBC today and where you see our country?
Yeah, so I've had an unconventional journey to get where I am today, but I do appreciate the 25 years serving as a trial lawyer doing both criminal and civil, because I think you need to have street cred to be able to talk about a lot of the issues that America is facing today. The battle for democracy is not one that it's not being fought in the ether. It's being fought in the courtrooms across the country. And I think it's great that I had the background to be able to try cases and to become familiar with the judicial system. And I would like to be able to use that experience when I talk about it, when I'm serving as a legal contributor or when I'm, hosting my show. And that's what I try to do. I try to make sure that my journey from practicing law, from everything from small to big law firms to running my own law firm, now that I'm doing full time, 100% TV, I want to make sure that I can parlay that experience into knowledge, because knowledge is power. And that's exactly what I want my viewers to have. I want them to have that takeaway when they leave watching the Katie Phang Show. They learned something new and something nuanced, not just something that you could just pick up the internet and read. I want to make sure my guests are able to make you feel fulfilled, that you've tuned in and you've actually learned something after spending some time with me. And
it's funny. That's exactly what I take away. And we've done a couple stories together, with between my cancer and everything else. But your approach is really unique. I enjoy the way your guests seem to come on knowing that we're going to have a different angle on things. We're going to see the sides, and we're not going to hold back. I mean, what's lovely about with the way you straddle Peacock and broadcast is, I think you can talk about things that are not being talked about as much, right? I mean, it seems you seek those stories out.
Yeah, I do, because I think there is so much for public consumption out there these days. And I think you need to be careful about what you're putting out there. Mm-hmm. And I think we take the time to curate the information and the guests that we put on the Katie Phang Show, because you have just an amazing, I think, resource at a network like MSNBC, for example, to be able to get your information. But I think it depends on how it's presented. We may eat out at different restaurants. We may look at menus that have the same dishes, but they're cooked differently, right? And so I think that that's part of it. You want to come and you want to be able to get the information. But I also think in a time when disinformation and misinformation is rampant, you want to be able to trust the source of the information that you're getting. Partially when it's coming from the literal horse's mouth, it's actually the person who's living through the experience or having, gone through the event. And partially from an analyst that I think is credible. I know, an analyst or a person who's either done that journey, lived that campaign, done the actual political experiences to be able to come to you and say, with my wisdom, my training, my background, this is what I can tell you is what's going on.
And it's such a key time. One of the topics I touch on the show a lot is our institutions and what our institutions are facing in this moment and the challenges they face. And you straddle two direct different parts. The pillars you straddle between the media and the judicial system, the legal system, are very key parts of this, right? And we've seen some dramatic changes, obviously the Supreme Court issues and everything else, the appointments to the courts, but also our friends in the media have been very challenged in how to define these moments. Like you said, disinformation, misinformation, calling them lies. What are we doing this week? A national divorce, which we can talk about in a minute. But I mean, I love your perspective. Do you think especially these two institutions that you have feet planted in, both of them, are they meeting the moment in your view, Katie, or where do we hold them accountable, and is there a problem?
I think that's where I think particularly come into the best service for Americans.
Yeah.
Is because having lived through the judicial system as a litigator, as a lawyer, and having done it for as long as I did, it's sometimes hard to be able to describe as a journalist, as a part of the media now, what goes on, like how the sausage is made.
Right.
And part of that challenge comes from dealing with people's impatience with Merrick Garland, with the DOJ, with Fani Willis, right? Trying to temper expectations. That was the biggest challenge as a lawyer, was dealing with clients and their expectations. But I think it's important for people to understand that there is a process, and there's a reason why the process is what it is, and that you want it to be that process. And I think it's been very hard to reconcile those two, which is why I'm happy to straddle and live in those both of those worlds, to be able to say, having gone through this experience of presenting an indictment to a grand jury, or obtaining an indictment from a grand jury for presenting evidence, having tried these cases, gotten the convictions, and had all the concerns about how to get there, I think this is why, having a space and a platform in media, and especially at a network like MSNBC, allows me to be able to present that to the viewers so that I can temper their expectations, and I can explain, no, it's not because Merrick Garland's too scared to do it. It's because there's a lot that's going into the calculus of deciding how to move and at what pace. But it also lends me to have the experience to be able to say, that's why I'm looking at Fani Willis as being the first to return an indictment against Donald Trump et al. Soon, within the next couple of months, before you hit the summer of 2023, but then also confidently, based upon what I know about the federal system and the DOJ, you should get a special counsel Jack Smith indictment for the Mar-a-Lago documents case before the end of 2023.
When you're talking, I was listening, and I feel like sometimes it's sort of the Law and Order effect, right? It's like you and I have gotten used to this 1 hour show, or where the crime's committed, they're arrested, then it's investigated, and then it's tried, and it's all done in an hour. We move on. Do you think maybe we're a little bit of a victim of a pop culture thing, where we expect faster results, or is that just crazy talk?
I think that's part of it, but I also think partially there is an understandable and justifiable impatience that has overtaken us, because you and I were raised, as many other people that are tuning in to your podcast, that tune into my show, we were raised to believe in a world of consequence, that if you do something wrong, you are punished for it. It is an immediate thing when you're a child and you're growing up. You do something wrong, you are immediately punished. I think not many of us growing up, when we stole, candy from the dime store down the street, I don't think we waited 2.5 years to be punished for shoplifting. And I mean, and that may sound like a superficial example, but it's one that is important for people to understand. I do think that there is something of this moment that has to be appreciated, that I would agree that I subscribe to sometimes this impatience, which is, I don't care if he was the president of the United States. I think because he was the president of the United States, justice has to be swift. Right. But I also think this guy has created this kind of climate of no accountability, that if it is that old The Wire saying, right? If you shoot for the king, you best not miss. And I think that you have to have that in place. But as a former prosecutor, we thought about those things, but it didn't drive the decision to indict. We did consider jury nullification, and that is my fear in Fulton County. Right. My fear is you do indict him, but can you convict him? But as somebody said, and it is true, my job as a prosecutor is not to secure a conviction. My job as a prosecutor is to do justice, and I have to rely upon a jury to bring that conviction. If I was judge, jury, and executioner, then why would you need a jury? Right? If you put all of that in power instilled in one person and one person only, then you wouldn't need the rest of the judicial system. Right. And I think that is what we have to remind ourselves. There is a process, and the process should work. And I just think people are tired, but I also think they should get some faith and some reinstallation of the belief that the justice system and the judicial system will prevail. It's just taking a lot longer than people have been raised to expect.
Well, that's such a great perspective. It had changed my mind, which I would love about doing this show. I think you're right. I think a lot of us who are, especially, I'm clearly an advocate. I'm an activist. That's what I do. I'm a pro-democracy advocate, which is a weird thing to put in your bio, but here I am. And so, yeah, I get nervous because I do feel like our democracy is in somewhat of a danger. And Mr. Trump and his allies and others who have clearly attacked our Capitol, as we wait for justice, the wheels of politics remain and turn. You've got, Marjorie Taylor Greene, her national divorce talk when she was at the planning meetings for January 6th. So I do think there's a frustration there. At the same time, we get nervous. One thing I woke up to today is the forewoman from the Fulton County grand jury, is on TV talking about, you know, the witnesses and how they were funny or, you know, this weird shit. And I see a lot of your professional peers seem to be freaking out. Maybe I'm crazy. You know, I mean, that her behavior may endanger an indictment and give Trump his attorneys some defense. I mean, what's your perspective on that as a pro? I mean, you've been in that room.
So I cringe as well.
Yeah.
And I think we have to kind of parse it out. We'll deal with the professional, I think, ramifications in a second.
Okay.
I think the presentation, the delivery, the vehicle, the messenger is cringeworthy. Right. It is a very solemn duty to serve on a grand jury, regardless if it's a special grand jury with no indictment powers or not. Mm-hmm. To have her giggling and laughing and looking almost coy when she's having these conversations with media, with national media, is uncomfortable. But she was duly appointed by the fellow grand jury members to serve as the forewoman in the ripe old age of 30. There is something, I guess, there that maybe what we're seeing doesn't speak to how seriously she took her responsibilities as a grand jury member. Right. I think we also need to get some consolation from the portions of the unredacted grand jury report that shows that this was a unanimous decision, that there was zero evidence of fraud, zero evidence of election misconduct. I think the fact that she, along with the other 22 members of this grand jury, said it didn't exist after listening to 75 witnesses. I think the fact that this grand jury said people were lying and they were able to discern the credibility of these witnesses. And I also think the fact that they said, yes, indictments are coming. I think that is what I need to kind of have as my takeaway. Yeah. I hate having to wince when I listen to this woman speak. I don't know why she's speaking now. I think she could have easily done this national media tour after the indictments are returned. Yeah. But professionally speaking, and we can move to that point, will Donald Trump move to dismiss? Of course he will. Would he have done it if she had spoken and she had not spoken? Of course he would. Yeah. I mean, he's never going to be okay with the results of this special grand jury unless it's a zero true bill returned. Yeah. Period. And by the way, the special grand jury can't even return an indictment. Right. It takes another grand jury to do the indictment. I think, though, for purposes of Fani Willis, having had this impartial group of people from the community culled from a jury, quote unquote, of Donald Trump and other of people like Lindsey Graham, their peers, I think the fact that they've made a recommendation of indictments should weigh heavily and militate in favor of returning indictments from that subsequent grand jury that comes back. But we're in this like damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of pickle. It's like, you know, are we now supposed to say, oh, no, you know, doomsday is upon us because this young woman decided to speak out the way that she did? I don't think it's fair. I'm just going to lean on what I tweeted out last night, which is just because you can doesn't mean you should. Right. I don't know why those kind of inadvertent missteps, why they bother us so much, Fred. But I think it's because of exactly what we talked about a few minutes ago, which is we're just dying for accountability. Right. We just want there to be a consequence for somebody doing something wrong. And we feel like people are skating without that, you know, accountability. And that's what's bothering us the most. So maybe in fairness, objectively, we're misdirecting our frustration a little bit, maybe on this young woman.
No, that's great perspective. I mean, I think you're right on target. I mean, it is. I think a lot of it, like you said, the paranoia, the fear. So many people in America have become accustomed to Donald Trump just skating, right? He always finds a way to get out. I mean, we were all breathlessly waiting for Letitia James to finish her investigation of the Trump organization, and people were, you know, companies were, you know, and then in the end, it's like, well, here's your fine. You know, people don't understand the process, you know, right? And so you're like, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. The fine, you know, it's just, and he just remodeled his 757. You know, it's like, well, fuck, you know, and I think a lot of us just feel that way. It's like, fuck, you know, and the people get excited, and a lot of it, I call them the resistance movement, which I'm not a member of, contrary to being accused of it. The resistance, even the terminology makes me a little crazy, to be honest. I can't tell you how often I've talked to people who
as a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I got a lot of the bad guy stuff, so I don't know. That's right. I got St. Luke. But Hamill, come on the show. But anyway, Anyway, we digress. I got to him. We should do. Matt would love it. Matt's back there. He's a nerd like me. Anyway, we digress. Or as Brett Terhune says, I digest. But anyway, I think the frustration, this guy keeps skating and keeps skating and keeps skating, and he's just a master of never facing accountability in his whole life. I mean, Donald Trump's entire life has been mistake after mistake, bankruptcy, criminal charges, escape. He always finds a way to squeeze away down. I mean, he's a master at, I think an octopus would be proud of how he's able to squeeze through tiny holes and still find himself alive on the other side of it. There is a frustration, right? I mean, there's a frustration. Do you think, and so I'm going to circle back because you opened that can of worms. You said, Fani, you're looking at that this summer, you're thinking Jack Smith. So Jack Smith's on track. I mean, we're seeing, it seems like, for me, who is accustomed to it, the silence is freaking terrific, right? I mean, very little is leaking out. I mean, Jack Smith seems to be doing his job and taking it very seriously. And all the things we were proud about him being a no bullshit guy who's not going to be seeking the spotlight or anything else seems to be coming true. I mean, what's your take on that as a professional and especially with your national, city where you're sitting?
I think we know about what's happening in the Jack Smith room because of the media and reporters camping out and watching people going in and out and reporting to grand juries. Do I think leaks are happening through counsel, for example, conveniently? Yes. But every once in a while, as you know, a few days will go by and the next thing you know is we'll get a report that so-and-so got subpoenaed or so-and-so showed up to the grand jury. Yeah. The most recent round of subpoenas to Mark Meadows and Mike Pence clearly made headlines because we're all kind of scratching our heads and wondering how does Mike Pence saying, I'm not going to comply with the Jack Smith subpoena impact Jack Smith's investigation? But I think if there was anything that Jack Smith understood going into his role as special counsel as appointed by Merrick Garland is that time is of the essence.
Right.
I'm fully confident Jack Smith's not going to sit there and cut a corner because of time being of the essence. But I also think he's not going to risk the entirety of a prosecution on the one word of Michael Pence. Right. And I think that people need to be reminded that when you prosecute a case, you have direct and circumstantial evidence. And you can convict and you can prosecute on circumstantial evidence because sometimes you're lacking the direct evidence. Yep. I think when it comes to something like 1-6 and Donald Trump's role in 1-6, I need to make sure that people also have a delineation clearly. I think you're going to have a problem with Donald Trump being prosecuted for the violence of the insurrection at the Capitol, but the fake elector scheme is different. The fake elector scheme is tied to the 1-6, and that is also being investigated by Jack Smith. And so I comfortably say Mar-a-Lago because I do think that there is a very distinct case being made for Donald Trump that's separate apart from Joe Biden and Michael Pence and their retention of classified documents. I think that is a layup for Jack Smith. And I think people need to be reminded, though, it's not just Mar-a-Lago, it's 1-6 and it's fake elector.
Right.
Remember, there was a slew of subpoenas that went out in November of last year dealing with fake elector schemes in Arizona, Pennsylvania, et cetera. And then all of the information that's been culled by Fani Willis, you and I both know, Fred, there's an information share that's going on with Jack Smith in D.C., of which we're not privy. Yep. And so I think that it is so hard because I always get very frustrated because I am an impatient person. That is one of my biggest vices. I feel like we should not be walking, we should be running by this point. And I think that these things will happen this year in terms of the indictments being returned. However, I also believe that we have to realize, I think part of what happened to us too is I think we got a little bit tainted by the Robert Mueller experience. Yeah. I think we canonized him. I mean, we joke about your St. Luke candle. I have a Robert Mueller, worship candle. I still have it. You still have it.
Katie, that's the part. You still have it. That's where I'll fault you for
I kept it. It's not scented. It's a good light.
That's fine.
No, but I mean, I think we canonized and lionized Robert Mueller because I think at that point we put so much faith in the idea that one man was going to save us. But I think if we're being brutally honest, you said something a few minutes ago that always resonates with me. Donald Trump has gone through a life of no accountability.
Yes.
There's a reason why he's been called the Teflon Don. Yep. It's not Robert Mueller's fault that Donald Trump got to the point where he was elected president of the United States. There was also failed impeachment attempts against him as well. But he got to that role. He could have otherwise just been a joke reality TV guy who never served as a president of the United States, grifting day in and day out, but not directly impacting American democracy.
Yeah.
So who do we really have to blame? Let's blame Donald Trump. Yeah, but that's a layup. We have to blame the people that put him into office. And that is why it may sound like such an easy thing to say, but I think it fits with the title of your podcast. You know, democracy is something that has been bastardized. It has been bastardized to fit an agenda depending upon which party you are a member of. And I think that we need to blame voters. We need to blame voters. We need to say you never had any business electing that man. But then we also need to make sure that we still go out and we vote so you don't get a Kevin McCarthy as a Speaker of the House who turns over 40,000 documents and access to 1/6, security footage to Tucker Carlson at Fox News.
Insane.
You can blame Kevin McCarthy, but if he was never in that position, the Lauren Boeberts, the crazy MTG calling for civil war, if they're not in a position to be able to do that, then what are they? There's some dingbat ladies, from Colorado and Georgia, right? That are doing their crazy shit down the street at like the local whatever, the 7-Eleven. I just think we need to be a little bit more introspective sometimes about how we got where we are.
Right. And it's actually one of the reasons I took last week off is, the mission I've been working on is along those lines. I mean, I was shocked to discover that 23 Republicans ran unopposed last cycle in the congressional cycle, whereas only 6 Democrats did. And what's interesting is you look back at the data, that's actually flipped. Democrats had like 30 4 cycles ago, but now it went lower and lower and lower. Only 6 Dems are unopposed, and the Republicans went higher and higher and higher. And those include Paul Gosar and Debbie Lesko and others. And then when you look at the underopposed ones, the ones who had opponents who never really made a ton of money and didn't put up a fight, you got Ronnie Jackson, you got crazy Harriet Hageman. Yeah, I mean, these people, 75% of the Freedom Caucus ran essentially unopposed, because their opponents couldn't raise enough money to really put up a fight. So you're right. We're in a situation where we're not doing an effective job of turning out those voters, right? The numbers are there, and it's sort of my life's work right now is just understanding how do we fight everywhere and support everywhere so we can take on folks like that. But you're right. It's in the end, it is the voters. And of course, my recent experience. I was a senior advisor for Marcus Flowers in Georgia against MTG. A person who has no business running for office, but pulled incredible numbers up by the Tennessee border. If you look at our district, we did pull it. Marcus got 35% of the vote, which is the highest that the Democrats gotten in Georgia 14. But in the end, a lot of people just love it. I knocked doors. I tell the story, Katie. I was knocking doors, and I came upon a townhouse complex in the middle of the district, and there's an older lady there. I'll say a white lady. And I walked up, and she was talking to her neighbor, an older black man. I said, I'm here, want to talk to you about Marcus Fire. She goes, who are you for? I said, Marcus Fire. She goes, oh, no, MTG's my girl. And I'm like, whew. and I was like, oh. Yeah, no, she just drives them crazy. I was like, ma'am, okay, that's not governance, okay? Okay, at what point did we decide that non-governance and non-support, I mean, she literally, as soon as the election over, she closed she's down to 1 congressional office in the far part of her district. It's not listed on the website. It's just, and people just vote for this. They vote for not being represented. The funny thing I get, and I'm soliloquying here, I apologize, is there was a comment on maybe Matt saw it on the podcast on Apple. Somebody said, because the show is named On Democracy, right? The guys, what an idiot. It's a constitutional republic. And I'm like, okay, a constitutional republic's a form of democracy. Fuck. You know what I mean? But a constitutional republic, if we're a constitutional republic, that means it's representative democracy. We have to vote. We have to elect. We have to send our representatives. So the people who tell me, it's a constitutional republic, also the ones who are like happy just having this, 60-30 districts. I'm just ranting. I apologize. But it's just like you're right.
But your point is so well taken. I live in Florida. It is a purple state. I live in a red state. I have a DeSantis, Marco Rubio, Rick Scott, Anna Paulina Luna problem, right?
Oh, yeah, you do.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the problem that we have is I have a Ron DeSantis stacking a school board, right? I have a Ron DeSantis, quote, anti-woke agenda. I have Ron DeSantis taking his institutionalized racism and anti-wokeness and making it into our collegiate systems now. I mean, it starts as low as our elementary school, primary school children now in public schools that can't read certain banned books. It is stunning to me because I live in a city that you would think in Miami Beach is where I live.
Right.
You would think that it would not be so red, but it is. Miami-Dade County, the numbers that turned out for Ron DeSantis in the last election that voted for him and not for Charlie Crist was stunning.
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself, is it a candidate quality issue? Is it a lack of messaging issue? I will tell you, several high dollar donors did not come to Florida on behalf of the Democratic Party this last run, this last, cycle, because they quote unquote said, I can't put money into a failing race. So something's got to give, because it's not just at the highest levels in DC, in Congress, at the United States Capitol. It has trickled all the way down to your local school board races. And people keep on forgetting, I think, that, and how can you forget? I mean, the most immediate impact upon you is what happens in your backyard.
Right.
And so I think there is an exhaustion. And I think that is why we are so almost humbly, eagerly, hungrily looking for a crumb of accountability, because we want to have some type of sustenance, because I kind of feel like it's been famine. It's been famine for a while. We joyfully got a Biden presidency in 2020. I naively thought things were going to get better once Biden won. How stupid am I? So I've now taken that naivete and converted it to use my platform to get facts and evidence. I told somebody my currency is facts, are facts and evidence. That is what I trade in. That is my currency. And that's why I'm grateful for the platform I have to be able to share that information with people, to dispel and to eliminate disinformation and misinformation, because that's what's being trafficked.
Yes.
We laugh all the time, right? When we watch those clips of Jordan Klepper going over and interviewing people at Trump rallies. And yet these people live down the street from you, and that's what they think. They think that Antifa did January 6th, despite all the people pleading guilty and the Proud Boys and all these people and the Oath Keepers all saying, no, we were being driven to 1-6 to do what we did because of Donald Trump. I'm not forcing them to say that. Are you, Fred? No. These are not some Manchurian candidate criminal defendants, but it's still happening, right? And I scratch my head because I'm like, are these people really that dumb? And I don't want to be rude.
No, it's a different.
They seem stupid. Like Lauren Boebert is stupid. Marjorie Taylor Greene is stupid, like intellectually stunted. I'm not talking, I disagree with your policies. I seriously think they're stupid people. And they're serving in the highest halls, they're in revered halls of Congress, and they're serving some of the highest positions of power in our United States. And I ask myself, why? How did they get there?
That's the question. And is it a dumbing down of America? Is it the sacrifice of large swaths of our country to the other side? Is it the demonization? I mean, it used to be you'd hear people talk about their opponent or their colleagues across the aisle. Now it's those pedos, right? You're a pedophile, or you're a baby mutilator. That's the one I get a lot now. Oh, you're a baby. This is really evil and pernicious stuff. Where
I'm so glad you brought that up, Fred. Hold a second. I read something today. I saved it for us to talk about because I almost passed out. So speaking of that, this is what I read. Russian President Vladimir Putin today speaking Republican talking points in order to get aid cut off to Ukraine. Saying, quote, the West is perverting their own people, destroying the family, mocking children. Even pedophilia is declared the norm. They are even considering God to be gender neutral. We must protect our children from degradation.
There you go.
If you closed your eyes and I didn't tell you that was the Russian President Vladimir Putin speaking, you could literally fill in the blank with any ranking member of the Freedom Caucus.
Actually, they're even worse. You know what I mean? I mean, that's kind of tempered, to be honest. That's like
Freedom Caucus light.
Yeah, it is. If
you close your eyes and you could just do a constant parade of Republicans, those are Republican talking points.
Right.
And it's like, and you want to talk about, being America first. I mean, you want to talk about, being pro-America. I mean, that's a Russian talking point that you're basically, perpetuating when you're a member of the GOP.
Yeah.
So there is this idea that when it comes to justice, when it comes to the law, when it comes to politics, when it comes to these institutions of ours, that it's not a level playing field and that we're not doing enough in terms of taking the gloves off and rolling up our sleeves to be able to fight for democracy. But I think that we are, and I think we still need to do more. And I think what we do need, though, is, like I said, we need a little bit of a crumb of justice. And I think that needs to come from an indictment. I think somebody needs to say, see, there you go. There's accountability for when you do something wrong.
Yeah. And it'll drive us to say, okay, to have faith, because people are losing faith. I'm seeing people I believe in who I've supported, who have been in this fight in various forms for years. And you see them talking and speaking and tweeting about, what's left at this point. They're losing their faith that this democracy can even function. We have an entire generation. I had a wonderful guy, Santiago Mayer, on here on the show a couple of weeks ago talking about Gen Z, and you think about what Gen Z is seeing, nothing but economic deprivation, nothing but constant war since 9/11. I mean, we've got an entire generation that's really, what does that believe in our system? And they can't even get justice, right? They can't see justice be served. They see their peers, they see black men being murdered, they see women being abused, and their rights taken away. And Gen Z feels this, so it makes me nervous. Now, it gives me some hope that Gen Z feels this and they're going to fight. But what are we handing them? I'm a Gen Xer. My generation's completely fucked. I mean, I'm not even going to pretend anymore. My West Point class, I had to piece out of all of the things associated with my West Point class because there's such deep bigotry, and it's shocking to me. It's shocking to me that people who swore an oath to their country can be so bigotry. A guy who had made general wrote on LinkedIn about how diversity and equity is just racism and wokeism. Like, the fuck is wrong with you, dude? You were a 2-star general. So we're really in a very scary, dangerous place for guys who are as old as I am, have seen it. And fuck, I don't mention it often, but I did fight for my country. And this isn't what I fucking fought for, And
I don't even know what generation I am. I'll be 48 this year. So I don't know. What am I? Gen, I don't know.
Are you an elder millennial? No, you're Gen X. You're Gen X like me. You're a young Gen. I'm an old Gen X. I'm old Gen X. You're a young Gen X. Yeah. So there you go.
But to answer your question, what is there for any generation, millennial, Gen X, Gen Z, whatever, to be able to look at? People like you. And I'm not saying this to blow smoke up your ass. I'm being serious. You served your country. If you look at what that 2-star general said, that's not you. And that's not a lot of people that served in our armed forces. They don't believe that. Everybody bleeds the same color, right? I mean, that is what you did. Your sacrifice counts for something. You're taking your activism to make the world better for people like me with a kid, right? You're making my kid's world better. I'm a former Republican. There's a whole bunch of us that are either never Trumpers or former Republicans that have said, I'm not doing this anymore, or I'm not going to have this be the future for America. And I'm taking my voice, my experience, my training, all of that to convert it to help make sure this doesn't happen again, that we don't have a repeat performance, which they did. They successfully kept Donald Trump from taking the Oval again in 2020. That's what people should have hope for. A generation of children that are literally doing active shooter drills, that are dying by the dozens, and yet still showing up. That's where the faith comes from, right? I believe wholeheartedly that my 8-year-old's world's going to be better because of people like you, because people that are saying, I'll take the criticism for having contributed a little bit to where we have found our institutions, but I've said enough is enough and I'm going to change them for the better. I think that's where people have to find hope. There are always going to be people that are going to be super far right and super far left, right?
Yep.
It's the people that said, I'm going to take a stand when I could sit this one out, that are not sitting it out anymore. And that's exactly where the faith comes from. That's where we continue to believe, because for those of us that could have easily just said, yeah, you know what, I just won't vote in the cycle, or, hey, you know what, I'll stay a Republican, but I'll vote for the less threatening ones like the Paul Ryans, whatever. The fact that we look back and we look at Paul Ryan as being less threatening, or we look at, like Ted Cruz as a prospective candidate, God knows when they were doing the whole race. Jeb Bush, geez, like when you look
Rubio.
At those people.
Don't forget Rubio.
Marco, water drinking Marco, like you know, we have to remind ourselves we've gone really far, you know, off track. And there's a whole bunch of us that are collectively pushing us back to where we need to be. And I think that's where you get your faith. I think that's what it is. You could have just said, Fred, you could have just said, I've served my country. I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah.
But you don't, right?
No.
And so that's I think that's where we find ourselves. That's where we find the strength to say we're going to pick ourselves up and we're just going to keep going.
Well, thank you. And I think that's a great place to finish. And I appreciate you. It's very kind. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was literally just talking to my partner today about this. I was like, you know, I just want to fight. You know, I'm building something new. I'm really excited to tell you about in the coming weeks. But, you know, we just can't stop fighting. And you're right. We have to dust off and take our licks. I had some challenges with my old organization, as you know, and you just, it does make you tougher though. The scars make you tougher, and people like you make us tougher and help us get the truth out there. And I just can't thank you enough for what you're doing. I can't thank you enough for using your platform to tell the truth and your background as a prosecutor and lawyer to keep these things straight for us. So with that, Katie, I thank you. Thanks for joining us. Man, I'm so glad I got you on. I appreciate you, and look forward to seeing you. I'll reach out. I'll text you soon and say hi.
Thank you for allowing me the privilege of the time and of your listeners' time. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, sister. I appreciate you. You know, if someone told me there are science-backed ingredients that could help me feel 15 years younger in just a matter of months, I wouldn't have believed it. Well, then I tried Qualia Senolytics. You know, as we age, everyone accumulates senescent cells in their body. Senescent cells cause symptoms of aging, such as aches and pains, slow workout recoveries, sluggish mental and physical energy that I know so well, all associated with that middle-aged feeling. Now, also known as zombie cells, they're old and worn out and serving a no useful function for your health anymore, but they're taking up space and nutrients from our healthy cells. You know, much like pruning the yellow and dead leaves and plants in my garden, Qualia Senolytic removes those worn out senescent cells to allow for the rest of them to thrive in your body. You take it just 2 days a month. The formula is non-GMO, vegan, as well as gluten-free, and the ingredients are meant to complement one another, factoring in the combined effect of all the ingredients together. But best of all, on top of all that, you have a 100-day money-back guarantee. And since taking Qualia Senolytics, I have had higher energy levels. I feel 15 years younger, more productive, enthusiastic in life. Not to mention, importantly for me, less aches and pains. Now, resist aging at the cellular level. Try Qualia Senolytic. Go to neurohacker.com/Fred for up to $100 off, and then use code FRED at checkout for an additional 15% off. That's neurohacker.com/Fred for an extra 15% off of your purchase. And man, thanks Neurohacker for sponsoring our show. Man, what a great conversation. You know, I think Matt, Matt, I'm convinced not to write scripts anymore. I'm just going to have a couple of, great conversations. You know, I had this podcast for this reason, is to have the conversation with people like Katie Phang and last week Bill Crystal and others, just to, you know, these interesting people so we can talk and have a no holds barred, honest conversation. So, man, I kind of count my blessings to have the opportunity to use this platform and have these conversations with them. And for you all as listeners, and I appreciate you. Again, as always, I'd love you to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms. I'd love you to subscribe on YouTube. We did break the big 1,000 subscriber mark. We still need a lot of people to sit and watch the show for a while, but we're starting to build an audience. And the notes I get and the DMs I get on Twitter and the people reach out, want to be in the show, it's humbling. It's exciting. It tells me we're doing something right. We've got some exciting stuff coming up. We've got great guests coming up the next few weeks, experts in democracy, former candidates for governor and all. And I'm so excited to keep sharing it with you as we keep moving forward for our democracy. As always, this show is sponsored by our friends at Vi Media. Vi Media is a great marketing partner. They're your digital marketing agency based right here in Greater St. Louis with a nationwide footprint and growing. They just won a bunch of more awards. It's fun to watch them grow. They have been supportive of the show. I use their studios as one of our places where we hang out. That's vi.media. It's VIE.media. Check them out when you get the chance. And again, as I always say, keep on doing what you're doing. Keep in the fight. You can find me anywhere. I'm on Twitter at FPWellman, at FPWellman. I'm on all the cool channels now, Spoutable and Posts. I'm all FP Wellman there. And of course, my Instagram is FP Wellman Official. The other one's all my grandkid pictures. You can't see those. But with that, thank you for joining this week. Another great show. We've got some more coming up. I got some exciting news. I hope you're paying attention. The next week we'll be announcing our newest project that I've been working on that I've been kind of keeping a secret from you, but it'll be public shortly. And I'm very excited. It kind of goes to what we've been talking a lot about in the show, about fighting everywhere and taking on our democracy and making it our mission. So I can't wait to tell you more about that. With that, have an incredible day, and thanks for joining us.